Right, good evening. So I'm coming to you today from Make My Trip, and we're shortly going to be starting out with Deep. And Deep Kalra is an old friend. We go back maybe about 20 years to when I started Consortium Gifts and he started Make My Trip. And we've had some interesting experiences over the years, and today I'm actually here to discuss and talk about his journey, his life, and how he's actually grown over the years. And we're going to be taking those contributions towards my upcoming book. Smashed, Bashed, Yet Not Dashed is now heading towards the final stretch, and we have 10 hero interviews, so 10 people who I've come across in my journey and who have influenced me as a person, and I've learned from as well. So that's what brings me to Make My Trip, and Deep is going to be sharing certain insights from his journey, and these are going to be invaluable insights for our readers. And with that said, I now take it forward with Deep.
Have you ever been knocked down and found it hard to get up? Have you ever been knocked down and bounced back to come back even stronger? Hi, I'm Gaurav Bhagat and you can call me GB, and welcome to the Smashed, Bashed, Yet Not Dashed podcast, a fortnightly podcast where I speak about persistence, perseverance and overcoming the odds to come out ahead.
So Deep, firstly, thank you for doing this, and appreciate the fact that you've taken time out, to contribute towards the book.
It's my pleasure.
We of course go way back, and I'm glad we're connecting again to do this.
Absolutely, I love what you're doing in your
Thank you.
next avatar. Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
really cool.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. So, getting straight to it, I had some questions, pertaining to where it all started, for you, and I'm talking about even going back to perhaps instances from school, where you had certain defining moments, growing up, that kind of set the context for the journey that you actually took, and giving you all those instances of perseverance and seeing that through. So some instances that come to mind growing up, either be it school or even earlier days, where things like that actually happened.
Okay, interesting. It's not easy to always connect the dots. So I did have a really good childhood. I spent my entire school life in one school, St. Columbus High School in Delhi, and it was clearly a great school way back then, as you would also know. And I'm a very proud Columban. But I think it's fair to say that Columbus was a great place for some people, especially if you excelled in any field.
Right.
It needn't be studies alone or academics alone. It was also if you were good in sports or you're good in extracurriculars. I think it was very good. And this refrain I've heard from someone else actually who's kind of seen their child through Columbus.
Right.
I have a couple of friends, very dear friends from Columbus who don't feel that strongly.
Right.
I don't think it was such a great school for an average student. And I see today's schools, like both our kids didn't go to Columbus, they went to a new age school, they went to Sri Ram. And we saw a very different approach and probably a more holistic approach. I think fortunately for me, I was fairly good at studies, I did well, and I did, I was quite involved with many activities. So school was great for me. So I think one got probably a lot of encouragement from teachers, both conscious, subconscious, which gave one the probably confidence to go ahead and try other things.
Right.
So someone would say, yeah, if there's the first time ever there's a play or theater or drama, you don't know anything about it, but you're saying, how hard can it be if someone else is doing it?
Right.
Or if there's, quizzing or debating or whatever else. So you just got involved in a whole bunch of stuff.
Right.
There were probably early stage leadership opportunities by being monitors or prefects or whatever. I think we were called monitors and prefects.
Correct.
So I think it was interesting. And then if you got involved in school beyond school hours, you got close to the Christian brothers, the sports teachers.
Right.
I think it was very rewarding. So maybe that played a role.
It did.
So hard to say, but yeah, it was a great childhood, both in school and outside school. Great friends, and a happy family. So I think.
And they were tough, right? Some of those teachers were quite hard actually, and they would come down on you, pretty strongly. And I remember, even growing up in Columbus, where I was there till the 5th grade, I remember some of the teachers were strict, and I think it built a great foundation.
That I can talk about. I was thinking you may not bring it up, but Yeah, so I think we were pretty clearly in the Christian brother kind of strain where they believed in spare the rod and spoil the child. So I think that's something they made no bones about.
Right.
So you got whacked left, right, and center for any and everything. So I have a very funny incident, which is worth telling. Just tells you the extreme. So I did get whacked for all kinds. I got involved in many naughty things. So I did get whacked, and when you got whacked and you got caned, actually. If you got caned on your backside in winter, you actually couldn't sit for a while. And so you'd be squirming at home because you dare not tell your parents that you'd been whacked, because the first reaction was you must have done something wrong. And how it's changed, because as we have our kids growing up, like, you know, I think if teachers talk loudly and they make the child upset or crying, like the parents are normally there and saying, oh my God, my child's going through trauma and stuff. So it's the full extreme in 30 years. So once I remember, very famous brother D'Souza, who's quite a legend, brother Eric D'Souza. I'm very close to him. He's not well now, sadly. So he called us all, I think, after the class 10 boards, and into the auditorium, middle school auditorium, and he said, you know, we are here to kind of congratulate those who've done well, chastise those who haven't, and compliment those who could do better, or something like that. And everyone was being called up, and quite a few were getting caned multiple times. Some people. And I thought I'd done fairly well, and the last name to be called was mine. And I said, like, what have I done? So I got caned because I missed 1 mark. So I had a 99 and I got caned in front of everyone. Everyone thought it was very funny except me. I can laugh about it now.
Right, wow.
But it was just his way maybe of saying that was careless. And, you know, you learn some hard lessons going through that. I got suspended from all extracurricular activities for being, you know, I think I disobeyed some laws, and I was suspended for 3 months, so I couldn't take part in any, and that was really hard. So, you know, you learn some of those lessons because for them it was very clear your punishment will be commensurate to what you've done wrong. So maybe it played a role.
Maybe
so,
it did.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you. And, you know, of course, you've achieved, you know, great heights over the course, you know, of the last, well, now 20 years. It's been a phenomenal journey, you know, at Make My Trip. What are some of the core things that actually went into, you know, making that happen, like, you know, core values or core principles that kind of went into, you know, the success that you've actually had over the past, you know, 20 years?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So I think when I started Make My Trip, and actually in year 2000, so come, you know, very soon we'll be exactly 20 years old, which seems amazing because it doesn't seem that long. And as you know, when you're having fun, it doesn't seem that long. And actually when you're going through a tough time, it seems long then, but later when you look back and you say, seriously? I mean, we went through 4 years of hand-to-mouth existence up front. I'm saying, how did we even do that? And I think there's something about age, and there's something about, you know, just the passion and the genoon at that point of time where you can do those things. It's much harder to do later on in life. I had worked 8 years before. I'd worked in 3 different professional organizations before starting Make My Trip. And I think that's helped me a lot as we've scaled up. But definitely in the early days, I think we had a dream start. So I've now fairly, I think, well known, but I actually signed a term sheet on a paper napkin. I signed the terms, not a term sheet, with Neeraj Bhargav from eVentures in a mall in Bombay. And, you know, pretty much it fell into place. We got $2 million after some time, which was great to get it on a business plan. And we were up and away, and we were promised another $1 million if we hit certain milestones. But lo and behold, not only did we not get that $1 million, but eVentures wanted their money back because they were packing up. It was the dot-com bust, and they were packing up, and they needed to give money back to their limited partners. So that was a real jolt within about a year of starting. And you know, when I look back, I said, wow, at that point of time, most companies would have probably packed up. We probably should have packed up, but clearly didn't want to, and I think there were 2 clear reasons. The first one was when I saw the metrics, and I'm definitely a creature of numbers. I saw the metrics, we were improving week on week on almost every metric, and that felt that we're onto something. And secondly, and very importantly, there was the team. So I had this team around me. We were 42 people then who completely believed in, you know, what I was doing. And I just felt really bad about letting them down because they had probably equal amount of passion. So when eVentures actually shared with me that, listen, we either pack up and go home and, you know, give us whatever money is left, and there was very little else, and pay everyone maybe a couple of months salary, or buy us out, which I thought was pretty ludicrous because you know if I could buy them out, I wouldn't have taken their money.
Right.
But I learned the concept of distress valuation through that, which was also interesting.
Right.
But when I looked at the people and I spoke to the couple of senior guys, there was Keyur, Rajesh, and Sachin. You know some of them,
Right.
and they all believed in the business completely, and they said, yeah, we're going to make a fight of it. And I said, wow, that's what I wanted to hear. But we couldn't carry the weight of so many people. So I actually called everyone into our small lunchroom in Okhla phase 1. And I said, guys, we are going to take a weekend off, which was pretty rare for us. We actually worked probably right through the Sundays. And come back on Monday and tell me if you're in or out, but this is the reality. And the reality is if you're senior, you got to take cuts in cash, comp. We'll make it up with stock. One day it'll be worth it.
Right.
And if you're junior, no cuts, but you know, no raises really. And we're going to cut back and we're going to, you know, hunker down, move into a smaller place. We moved into the mezzanine of, I don't know if you ever saw, you saw that office?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So that office, I'm glad you've seen it. Most people where I speak to have not seen it. So that mezzanine, if I raised my hand, anyone raised their hand, you touch the ceiling.
Correct.
It was a long, narrow
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And it was, believe it or not, 11 rupees a square foot. So it was the cheapest real estate possible. And, you know, you do all these things. So anyway, overnight or over the weekend, we shrunk almost by half. From 42, we went to 24 people. Secretly, I wanted that because we wanted to lessen the expense and the burn.
Right.
And we all decided to make a fight of it. And I think right through the next 2 years, we had probably enough for 2 months of expenses, salaries, whatever. I took 100% cut in salary. I could do that because my wife had some earnings, and Sachin and Sachin and Keyur took cuts and became stock. Rajesh Angel funded us, but he needed to do something else, so he ran e-bookers for a while. So we did all kinds of things just to survive.
Right.
And yeah, somewhere we got through those 2 years. We got angel funding in 2003 and 4 from a customer of ours who was based in the US, would buy tickets from us. And he put in, I think, $150,000 or $200,000. And then one from a traditional old world travel agent, tour operator in UK, Indian gentleman, who also funded us about the same amount because they thought this is the future. And long story short, I think we survived till we took a real round of venture funding in 2005.
Right.
Thereafter, we grew quite fast. So that bootstrap phase was obviously all about just making ends meet. Growth is immaterial. It's more about profitability or sustenance. In 2005, we actually relaunched in India. So what I should have mentioned earlier was when we launched, I wanted Make My Trip to be the defining place for people to travel to India, from India, and within India. But within a quarter of launch, October 2000, we launched. By New Year's, it was clear that people in India weren't ready to buy online. People were checking, what we call lots of lookers, but very few bookers.
Right.
And they just weren't buying because way back then, I don't think they had the confidence to drop their credit card online. They just wanted to see the price and then take it to their offline travel agent, and they say, internet pe ye mil raha hai kind of thing. And you know, that was the way it was, which you can't blame anyone. I think IRCTC, so we stopped marketing in India completely within 3 months. And in hindsight, that was probably one of the smartest decisions because we just didn't see it ever making sense. But we continued NRIs in the US. And those guys were pretty much used to buying online. Also, they were not coming back only for leisure. So through dot-com bust, 9/11, SARS epidemic, they kept coming back because the reality is, you know, kids were being born, people were getting old, parents were passing away, etc. All that was going on. So it was visiting friends and relatives, but that kept our fires going. In 2005, I felt things had changed in India, probably late by a year, frankly. A couple of things happened. Indian Railways, so IRCTC, they launched their website around 2003 and got people comfortable to pay online and secure, like this works. The second was low-cost carriers. So a whole host of low-cost carriers had come. Air Deccan had started it, and they were advertising these really mouth-watering fares. And the travel agent you called didn't want to sell them because he or she didn't make a commission on them. Also, you had to instantly buy them. It became ticketing, so the money was gone. So the customer at the other end of the line changed their mind. You won't get it. You had to chase up for a refund, if at all. So we thought we could solve that with technology. We could build direct connects from our website into the host systems of each of the low-cost carriers, bypass the global distribution system or the GDS, Amadeus or Sabre, but get the full service content from the GDS.
Right.
And what you do today, so when you put in, let's say,
APIs.
Delhi, Bombay, Delhi onto our website or app,
Right.
and you get those instant results. Of course, some are cached, but some are coming. All the low-cost carriers that we're getting directly from APIs built into their host systems.
Correct.
We're getting full service carriers from the GDS, and we're putting it all together for you and arranging it in whichever manner you want.
Correct.
So I think in 2005, when we launched with that promise, something fundamentally changed. And I think for the first time, the Indian traveler was actually in control.
Right.
So the Indian traveler for the first time was, okay, now you make the choice.
Yeah.
You make an informed decision of what you'd like to pay for or not. So do you want to save 1,000 rupees and fly with no meals or early in the morning, less leg room?
Sure.
Or do you want to spend 2,000 rupees extra and fly with, in-flight entertainment in the good old days of Kingfisher?
Correct.
So all those choices you could make, and your travel agent didn't make them. And people didn't know how to say it, but they were getting tired of the travel agent saying, that's not available. And actually selling you what they wanted to, because there was no way you could read that cryptic green and black screen.
Yeah.
So I think that was a big game changer. So when we launched in India, we were 20 million in top line for the 4 years, 20 million US dollars, and about 2 million in revenues, which is the important metric in our business. And when we IPO'd in 2010, in those 5 years, we grew about 25x. So we were about 500 million and looking at 60 million in revenues when we went public. So that was a period of frenetic growth.
Right.
Most of it driven by air tickets. Hotel was still small. Hotel now is a much better size of the business. But yeah, it's been quite a journey.
So, as entrepreneurs, we often hear also of the concept of, paralysis, by analysis. So would you say, like in these early days, you guys just jumped in and did a lot of things without really thinking them through, and had you actually got into thinking and getting into that, things would have possibly turned out differently? Do you think that actually happened?
I think shades of both. I think when you have too little money,
right,
you're bootstrapped, you actually have to analyze everything, every dollar that you spend, not every dollar, but every, let's say, 10,000 rupees, 20, there's a lot of money you're spending, you're saying, what's my ROI? What's my ROI? So you're measuring ROI on everything. Like I said, it was important that our spend, our wage bill actually came down, because that was a fixed cost.
Right.
It was critical that our other fixed costs like rent were minimal. And that's why we were in that tiny bogie. I call it a train bogie where we sat in. So at the end of the bogie, 3 of us sat.
Right.
And when we twirled around, our knees would actually touch each other. So it was really tiny, but it was great fun. And by the way, through that whole process, all 3 of these gentlemen became, co-founders. Rajesh, when he joined us later, but Keyur and Sachin.
Right.
And, they completely earned that right, and they actually put in as much in the company as I did, for sure, which was a big learning. And we'll probably talk about team building later.
Right.
But so you measure everything. And so you don't have an option but to be short-sighted. People say, how can you take long-term decisions when it's, hand to mouth? And, you built a business from scratch, and you've seen you have to survive. You don't have a backstop.
Correct.
When you have too much money, you can probably end up spending a little indiscriminately, but it comes to bite you in the back.
For sure.
So at some point of time, you've got to, you've got to explain either to your investors or to the market,
Right.
why are your economics getting better or worse? And hopefully if they're getting worse, that means on every single transaction you're doing worse versus doing better.
Right.
So I think that's really important. So I don't know if we ever suffered from analysis paralysis, because fundamentally entrepreneurs are bias for action is very high.
Right.
So you do something, and beyond a certain point you say, okay, now let's take that leap of faith.
Sure.
And dekha jayega, let's take it, but it'll be micro steps. But let's take that step and see what happens, and then you course correct. So the better way to describe it, and that's the way we work even today actually, is a very iterative but experimentative platform.
Sure.
So on the internet, you have something which is called an A/B platform. A/B testing is the most powerful thing you can build.
Right.
So essentially, it's a lot to build, but essentially it is an experimentative platform where we can expose any percentage of our customers to a change, keeping the rest constant. So typically that percentage will be 1% or less. On airlines, it'll be 0.1. So let's say we get 20 million customers coming in every month. We might expose 200,000 of them or something to a different kind of front end, something different, a different sort order, just to understand. And if we see that change as being a positive, then we dial that up from 1% to 2% to 5 to 10, and that's how we make changes. So you never bet the bank now.
Yeah.
So AB platform is the fundamental for internet businesses. I think it was invented by Amazon probably, but if you don't build that, then you'll never know. And that's the beauty of our business. So even if we all log on right here, right now, if we were to all log on, some of us might see slightly different nuances to the front end on our app, because some experiments are going on at all points of time. But they're, fantastically rewarding and learning. We also encourage people. So let's say today I was sitting with some folks on a session on mapping, on hotel mapping, and I was saying, like, do this and do this. And very politely they were telling me, okay, we will try it out on RAB. And that's the way to do it, because we'll only do it if it's really working. We're not going to bet the bank on it. So it's quite fascinating. So I think we would be more in that mode.
Got it.
I think seldom have we been completely we've made some crazy mistakes where we said, like, okay, we're just going to go ahead and do this because on a gut. And you have to follow your gut, but then measure it. So on a gut, we believed that in the year 2000, there was, by the way, only one flight going to Goa at that point of time, or two, from Delhi. And everyone wanted to be in Goa on New Year's kind of thing. So, today there are 20 flights. So we said, we'll do a charter. So we chartered a whole plane. We took it from Sahara Airlines, and we thought we did all our paperwork, everything, and we sold out the entire plane. But we got only maybe 25% less of the yield we expected. Why? Because Sahara went, when they saw the demand coming, they went and launched a schedule. They moved one aircraft from somewhere here, and they crashed. So we learned it the hard way that, chartering is a really hard business, because you pay for the entire plane no matter what happens. So we've never really gone into the inventory model after that. Seldom, like in super peak dates where we know we can sell, then also with caveats like we can give back the rooms if they don't sell. But typically it's a zero inventory, so low asset risk model.
Got it. And going back to the early days, so again between 2000 and 2003, when you had come in from I guess ABN AMRO initially, and then AMF post that, and you'd taken like a big haircut in terms of, you probably hadn't drawn any money from the business for a while.
18 months was zero.
So how was that going back to, like, okay, let's say Amrita and the kids and the family and your dad, and how was it like going back to them and telling them that, okay, this is what I'm doing, and eventually this is going to pay off? What was it like for you in those days?
No, sure. I think it's a fair question. Actually, just before starting Make My Trip, I'd worked with G Capital. I was there for about a year and a half as a vice president, so it was a great job. I was paid very well. But I think when you turn entrepreneur, you obviously, that's one thing, you're comfortable, but you still draw salary. And they were modest salaries when we started out. I think our salaries, we had pegged them at about, I think it was like 12 lakh an annum or something, which was fine. You had enough. Also, needs were much simpler, etc., whatever. But when the cuts came, A, there was no option. B, I think there was a lot of conviction, because conviction, it can only be measured when you actually bet not the bank, but you bet your bank. And there's a big difference. And I say it, and being completely cognizant of the fact that I've raised private capital, I've raised public capital, I've done that, there's a big difference. Because it starts impacting not only you, when you start eating into savings, also impacts your family. And I had, one little kid just before Make My Trip started, one happened after. So literally between 99 and 2001, I say we had 3 kids, one of them was Make My Trip. And it was interesting times because, obviously my wife was like completely occupied with the kids, which probably was a good thing in hindsight, because she also, I think learned, I think by then that much she was very clear about me that, listen, if you're not happy, then there's no point. Like, be happy in whatever you're doing, working crazy hours. Many nights we didn't come back. So many nights she stayed in office, just spent the night in office. And, we all had toothbrushes in office. And it was quite interesting. But I think the family support is important. My parents and my wife have always kind of believed, like, he'll kind of figure it out. And if he needs to do something, he'll go ahead and do it anyway. And not in a bad way. So I got a lot of support, like when I needed to eat into my wife's savings. I don't think there was even a discussion. I mean, it was like, of course, this is our money kind of thing. And she never lets me forget it, of course, which is important, like all good wives. But I think that's important to have that support. Ian Rand, for me, like I've gone and actually reread Fountainhead. And I'm like, I understood so much more now. I reread it 5 years ago. During those really tough years when we were kind of actually wondering what are we doing. So I think it's a bit of that, and getting validation from people who feel equally closely like we're onto something, not stupidly. So I think the numbers give you the validation you're moving in the right direction. Yeah, totally. I'm the paranoid one always. So I'm definitely in Andy Grove's camp. By the way, that was a book which really inspired me way back then. Only the Paranoid Survive. Andy Grove of Intel had written it way back. That was great. Bezos, I've read all of, and he's the only guy who would travel. So I traveled to Bombay only to meet him, which was worth it probably. Yeah. So I think booking's done well. Expedia's lost their mojo along the way. So I think it's them. C-Trip is fantastic. They're Chinese, and they own a site now called trip.com, which is the international version. So we learn a lot from them. Right. Yeah.
And in terms of building the team, because initially there was, just like you said, you're down to about 24, and then once you need to, of course, keep, Sachin and, Kayur on, and, also when you started, scaling up and building others, how was that like to attract the right talent, and what was it that you were telling them to get them to come on board? Yeah,
and before I get into that, what I love to say is that of the 24, quite a few are still with me. Yeah. So it's pretty interesting. They've been there all 20 years. Amazing. In fact, a couple of them famously say it was their first job and say that they spent more time at Make My Trip than in life outside Make My Trip. So it's pretty interesting. Like some of them joined us at 18, 19 and 20 and they've been here right through and done really well, like going all the way to the top. So which is a great feeling. I think for startups, you really have only a couple of things to offer. You obviously can't offer top salaries. You don't have the money. You can offer decent salary, but you're offering the hope and the stock that one day this will be worth. But more than that, I think for really good people, it's not only the promise of potential wealth, but it's really the promise of being part of something and being a part creator. Yeah. So everyone can't be a co-founder, but founding team is a big deal. Right. So these people really believed that they were part of this, and they co-created the company, and they're absolutely right. If anyone asks me, like, what's the single reason for whatever success we've achieved, number one is team. There's just no question, no doubt in my mind. I mean, in my case, I know some entrepreneurs probably can do a lot more themselves. Right. I mean, I think if I have to take credit, my biggest credit should be for actually building the team. Awesome. Because I did that right. And get the right people. If you have good people, don't let them go. And that was really what I felt. I mean, if there are people who are very smart, which is great, but more than that, very driven, and interests are aligned with the company. And that's the key thing, which is like, the first thing when you're out there cutting a deal, when you're doing something, who are you thinking for? Right. If you're thinking for the company first, you're an entrepreneur. Yeah. And that's the kind of people we need. We need those kind of people even in large companies. And you can see all the large successful companies are where the CEO and the top people are very entrepreneurial, where they treat it like their own company. And so when you go out and you're representing the company, you would take the same decision as if it were your own. So I think that's the key really. And I think my earlier experiences in these three companies really helped to attract people and hold on, and I think to let go. Yeah. I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't let go and don't give. So you get great people to come on. Right. We're still hiring. This year we took on some very senior people at the leadership team level. Last year, we hired a very senior gentleman from Pepsi. He came and joined us. He's COO. And we have actually 5 new hires in the leadership team at C-level in the last, I think, 13 months, 14 months. And it's a refresh. Yep. Not so many have left. We've actually, I think, growing. People are going into new things. We continue to grow quite well. So when new people come also, I really believe that they can make a difference. I want them to believe that I can make a difference. Lovely. So when I come in out here, I'll get space. Otherwise, why would these guys join? They're in great jobs, they're getting paid a lot of money. They come because they've got the kick and they're saying, or rather they've got the itch and they're saying, I don't think at this stage of life, whether I'm 40, 45, I can do this from scratch. Right. Ab initio is not going to happen, but I would love to be part of something which is safe enough, like we're secure enough. This company is not going to blow up tomorrow, hopefully, but who knows. But more importantly, we get the best of both. And we have very candid conversations over the interviews. Like, listen, actually the only thing I really want to know about people is, what's your real reason to want to join us? You know, and let's go deeper into that. Not because I don't believe them, because I want to make sure that I can give them what they want.
Right, and the values are
Otherwise,
aligned.
they leave. Value alignment, over time, you get to know a bit more. But if I don't sell them, if I sell them something we're not, I think we'll both lose.
Agreed.
I might convince them. Within 6 months, 12 months, they'll figure out this ain't happening. They leave. Bad for them, bad for us. Every time you lose a person early, it's a big setback. Yeah.
Right.
So I think it's important that you align completely. What are your drivers? What are your hot buttons? What can we offer all of that? If we can, and I've seen that works.
True.
Of course, some will still not work out for various reasons. They get poached. So while they say it's flattering that good companies want to hire away from you, but it's a big pain in the backside when you have really good, people leave. You train them up, you invest in them, and they leave. But that's a reality.
Yeah. So of course, you have been the role model over the years for a lot of people in the startup space, a lot of entrepreneurs, period. And sometimes do you feel that people throw in the towel a little too early? They start on something, they've got this great idea, but perhaps just throw in the towel a little too early. And your advice to people, who are going through a rough patch, and thoughts in terms of what it would, or what they should do to overcome, even the most dire of circumstances.
I couldn't agree with you more. I say it all the time, which is, I speak to a lot of young entrepreneurs through TIE, TIE, and other fora, and I say it all the time. Some of the best businesses have not seen light of day because someone gave up too early. So when I have colleagues who are leaving to become entrepreneurs, and that happens a lot to us, by the way, and it's hard to say don't go. And they ask for what advice would you give? I always tell them, please go in thinking 4 to 5 years at minimum.
Right.
To even find out if you have a business. Don't go in with 2 to 3 years. More likely than not, you won't see anything. Right. You look in the rearview mirror and you won't even see green shoots. 4 to 5 years, you'll know, do I have a business, do I not? And then if it's a business, of course, there's no reason of looking back. But if it's not, at least you tried. Right. A lot of businesses, I think people just give up too early. And the expectations are wrong. I think we read romanticized stories of an Instagram which built this great company in 1 year. This is not Silicon Valley, and that's one-off. Nobody really reads how many companies didn't make it.
Agreed.
So persevere a little longer, because what is the opportunity cost? If you can survive and take care of home, because everyone has a different situation.
Right, right.
But the opportunity cost is probably 1-2 years of your life, but you'll never know if you were onto something. Please, be kind of lithe enough to, take the feedback, to tweak, to course correct, do all of that stuff.
Right.
But if you have something going, I think you should labor on. And things change, markets change. The India market opened up. If it didn't, we'd be sucking on air. It's as simple as that. So.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very important point, and especially when you look at kids today, and especially the millennials and now the Gen Zs. Their patience level is surprisingly or astonishingly low. They're like, we've been doing it for 3 months and nothing's happened. And
absolutely.
And for people who build companies and have taken forever to stabilize.
No, absolutely. I worry too. Though I think in some ways the youngsters are very, very bright, the millennials. But yes, there's an impatience for sure, because that's how they've grown up. I mean, we've changed too. So if you look at cricket's my favorite analogy, and how people sat through 5 days plus a rest day, 6 days of a test match.
Correct.
Knowing fully well that there'll be a draw as a result. So 60% of the time you had draws, 60 or 70%. And then how it moved to 50 over, and now even we are finding 20 over too long, and we all watch highlights. I have to confess, I'm a big cricket buff. I missed both these matches because I was traveling.
Right.
And I saw the highlights this morning because I just wanted to see the highlights. And even on the highlights, I'm saying, let me go to the juicy part. So I think we're all getting more impatient.
So your top 3 pieces of advice, for anyone who's starting out or struggling, or just has self-doubt in their mind, what would be your top 3 pieces of advice to them?
Okay, the challenge is to give only 3.
Okay, we are happy to have even more actually.
Okay, but let me, if I could prioritize, I think the first one you already touched upon. So I said I think the first one is to set a very realistic time frame and have that stamina. So it is really a series of sprints.
Right.
It's far more a marathon than it is actually, I think a sprint. So I think people should be very clear.
Right.
I would say invest in team in a massive way. If I was to do it all over again, I would start with 1 co-founder. Some people say 3 total. I say 2. with very complementary skills. So one would be all things business, one would be all things tech. Just broadly speaking, assuming it's in the same line. I think it helps to have a sounding board. It gives you a lot of encouragement. So when the chips are down, I think you need to have someone share that burden.
Got it.
It's really important. Big decisions, you need to have someone who equally can feel that. I know it'll cause some issues. There are some advantages of being able to have the last word. But I think in my case, I'd be quite happy with one co-founder with different skills. So I think team would be really an important one. It's, it sounds very kind of philosophical and nice to say, but I really believe the focus should not be chasing an exit. I know so many youngsters again who are coming in, or even older people saying, very focused on exit. I think the more focused you are on exit, the further away the exit will go.
Agreed.
So I do believe you need to focus on the core things. And for me, the core things are customers' pain points. How are you solving them? Are you solving them better than anyone else? And can you do it at scale? So if you can do that whole continuum, understand your customer, your different shades, different kinds of customer. Customers typically not like us. Different needs, biggest pain points, solve those. Solve them better than most people, or better than anyone, at least in India and maybe globally. And then scale it up. So if you can do that whole paradigm, the whole gamut, I think you're onto a business. Everything else will come. So the money, the exit, etc., is normally a byproduct. Metrics, definitely be metric driven, but simplify them into very few. So if people ask me, like, what do I look at? I look at the daily MIS all the time. I've taught myself not to react now because someone else's job to react. But there's still two core buckets for me which are everything in our business. One is the cost of acquiring a customer. It is just so critical. The second is conversion, because everything in our business is funnel. Even in sales there's a funnel, but for us it's that. And the third and the most undervalued one, I think, is repeat. Unaided repeat business. What's your repeat rate? If your repeat rate's not going up all the time, there's a problem. Because great brands are not built by advertising or great advertising. Great brands are built by great experience and consistently good experience. So if your repeat is good, that means people have enjoyed your product or service and they've come back for more. The caveat being you're not discounting. So if you remove discounts or you're reducing discounts and people are still coming back, you're onto a good thing. And if you look around us, the best brands in the world are built because they're great experiences. So, whether it's a pair of shoes, a pair of jeans, the coffee we like, the food we like, the phone we use, whatever it is, it's all about, the great experience and the reliability. So I would focus on these few basics. And
I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, that's what they say, right? If you really want to sell, I mean, either get them to fall in love with what you offer or solve a problem. So that's the two biggest drivers for getting anyone to buy. So absolutely. So seeing all that you've achieved, what is now your biggest driver? Like, what makes you, like, what is Deep's why today? Like, why do you, get out of bed in the morning and, still, going all out? What truly are, your drivers today, considering all that you've achieved, and where do you see yourself, going forward, and what truly are your drivers?
So very candidly, I don't think the job's still done. I think we've done okay. We've done well in some regards, but as a product core offering, and I'm our biggest critique by far, as everyone here painfully agrees, I would still say we are 6 on 10. So I think we've got a long way to go on certain products, making them even better. For me, ultimate joy will be when every customer can become a brand ambassador, and very few brands enjoy that. But for me, that would be like, now we've really arrived. So, and we should never rest and relax, but right now we're not there. We have many customers who love our service, but we have many customers, which is, I think a reality knock, who try us once and don't come back. Like, where do they go? And for me, it drives me crazy. Like, why won't they come back? Why can't we do a better job? Why can't we take holidays completely online? So probably in the air business, we've done fairly well. Our market share now in the whole, on the online space is getting close to maybe 70%. On all travelers is 30%. We've done well. We've done very well with Redbus. But I think on hotels, there's a long way to go. International, there's a long way to go. Holidays, it's such a beautiful space to do better. So I think I'm very, very charged up about that. So I spend most of my time now on the product and the experience, and with people. So I enjoy that. I think now I have the So what keeps me going, I, by the way, also get bored very quickly. But I've now managed to, so I think I spend my time doing the stuff I really enjoy.
Right.
Rajesh is there running the company as CEO, so he can do more mundane stuff. But you know, he's been CFO, he's a CA, so he loves some of that.
Right.
And it's a good combo, so it works out pretty well.
Yeah.
And yeah, still having fun. I don't know what else I would do still. There are many causes I'm very driven to,
Right.
but I don't think I can give them, 60, 70 hours a week yet. So I can give them some time, but I'm still not there where I can say this is all I want to do. And I've thought about it long and hard, so maybe that time will come.
Of course, yeah. Of course, education is something you're pretty passionate about
I am,
with
yeah,
Ashoka and with Sanjeev.
Absolutely.
So, great. And any hobbies that you pursue outside
Yeah,
of work?
quite a few, quite a few. So, love running away to dive as often as we can. Unfortunately, you can't do it in Delhi, but in December we were off to the Maldives. The whole family now dives, so that's great fun. It used to be only me. Now everyone's diving, which is great. Out here, it's more, I think, more fitness oriented. Like I still don't play golf, which I maybe one day, but it's more like swim in summer,
Right.
yoga, badminton, winter kind of this thing. Something to stay fit. But the rest of the time, I still love reading a lot. So, I do manage to read as often. I've become a audiophile.
Yeah.
So I do Audible. I find that very convenient. So, if you're walking or running or in the gym, you can do in the car. Now I can't read in the car, I get a headache, but I can hear my thing.
Right.
We have constant fights between my wife and me. That's not true. Reading, you're only hearing. But it works for me.
It's brilliant,
And podcasts, you know that. I think podcasts work really well.
Correct.
I listen to some of them, like TED and all is always on my kind of the favorite talks. They're great.
Yeah.
And I think I love my music, love finding time for friends and family. But time is always the biggest constraint.
Of course.
Yeah, so I think if there was one trait I would say which entrepreneurs should have to get successful, it's pretty, I would say, relentlessness.
Right.
So I think entrepreneurs have to be just relentless.
Yeah.
You can't give up. You have to keep going,
Right.
and the chips are down. And it relates to the whole theme if you look at it. Of course, brilliance is very important. Creativity is very important. Team, all that EQ is very important. But I think relentlessness, because you will get knocked down.
Right.
And so for me, that's the most important quality. Yeah, I think if there was one kind of game-changing incident which really did shake me up a lot, it was clearly the dot-com bust relating to the proverbial rug being pulled under our feet because we were told to pack up for no fault of ours. And I said, what the hell is this? So my biggest learning from that takeaway was always be in control of your destiny. I actually famously promised I'd never take venture capital again. I didn't for 4 years, but I had to eat humble pie because to launch a brand in India, one needed to get definitely, in 2005, we had about 2 crores with us. And 2 crores, I did think, can we launch the brand with this? And thankfully, I realized I couldn't. But we got very lucky with the choice of partner. Also, this time, the partner we took, the investor we took, this was Safe Partners. The gentleman there, Ravi Adusumali, was the decision maker. We were very aligned on values. I felt very comfortable with him, and I think it worked out. But we made sure in all of our agreements that we had enough control. So it's not like someone else could control your destiny.
Right.
So that for me was the biggest learning. Even we're listed today, and a majority of our stock is owned by public and large investors, etc. But I think from a control point of view, we are still in a very good position where we can control our destiny.
Right. Would you ever look at an India listing in terms of come back to India and list here as well?
We've thought about it. It's cumbersome. So 2 listings is not easy. Sorry. 2 listings is the additional kind of, it's a lot of overhead, cost and time. And I don't see the incremental value we'll get out of listing in India. So that's why it's not making sense. So otherwise, would love to from a brand point of view. So I actually keep telling the CFO also we should do it. And he's saying, it's going to be tough. But let's see, maybe at some point of time, it'll be great for the brand.
Right. And the good thing is that now you've got a lot of Indian investors who can buy stock in the NASDAQ.
Things
so
have changed.
Or,
Things have changed. Earlier, you couldn't do that. Absolutely
so I think
right.
that's going to be one way of not having people.
Absolutely right. But you don't get the brand benefit of being listed in NASDAQ. Like I still meet people who don't know we're listed. And it helps out here. So I think you appreciate it much more. Out of college, it was great because it was very idealistic, but now you realize how hard it is to be idealistic, right? So it made a lot of sense now. I think there's a lot of learning to be got from, I guess, I enjoyed recent Yuval Harari. I read the whole series, all three. I think they were pretty good. A lot of the TED Talks. So even I read this guy's Horowitz, Ben Horowitz. I read his stuff. Really interesting. There's a book he wrote, which is The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And it's really hard hitting. Actually, I watch a lot of docus also, which also helped me a lot. So it's pretty, amazing. I don't know if you guys have seen Inside Bill's Brain. It's just unbelievable. It's, it's about Bill Gates and how he's thinking about how he can actually impact the world. And it's nothing to do with Microsoft. It's about building the cheapest possible, no electricity, no water toilet for India and Africa.
Wow.
And how he thinks that can eradicate so many diseases, and how he put all his resources into doing that and made a contest and a challenge around it. So it's fascinating stuff, which actually for me is very motivating. I do find most other management books, there have been some great ones. Very famous professor, he died early because from Harvard, I think, of cancer. Clayton is definitely the name, Clayton Christensen or something. Super motivating. He wrote a book called How Will You Measure Your Life? And for me, it was a game changer. So I think you've got to just find something which, it's also, I've seen at what point of time are you reading it. The same book I've seen can also put you to sleep very quickly. So my trick, by the way, to go to sleep on long flights is to audiobook, put a management book on, 4 pages, gone. All good. So all types. But yeah, I think there are lots and lots of authors I've just totally enjoyed this thing, taking from talks. I think some talks are amazing. Yeah, I find them actually sometimes more inspirational because you can actually connect much more with these people. So, if you go really deep, and I thought about it a lot, I think it comes down to self-esteem. And it comes down to not fear of failure, but not wanting to accept failure. I don't know what's the right term for it, but saying, listen, see, in the past I'd worked for AMF Bowling, but it was a very entrepreneurial job. And fundamentally we had failed. I'd learned a lot, 4 years, tried very hard. Instead of 2,000 lanes, put up only 200 lanes. Sachin had worked for me then, he was my marketing manager. But fundamentally it failed. For me, one more failure, 2 dots make a line. So I don't think I would then have the courage to try something again. So I kept saying, like, listen, too early to quit, too early to call it like it's not happening and a failure and to write it off. I don't think I'd have the guts to try again. So for me, that was a big driver. Okay, abhi isme kuch juice hai, and where I got my validation was from the graphs. Things were improving. Not only were the absolute numbers going up, more transactions, more GMV, all of that stuff, but our conversion metric, which I talked about, was improving. And that when I would, me, KU is also very metric oriented. Sachin maybe less so, but he brought a very different dimension in. So 3 of us would look at that and we'd say, yeah, this is onto something. So we actually developed a code. I call it discipline and depression. So where we said if we are in for a month at least. That month, we are not going to rethink this because people, the rest of the guys in the team, 21 guys were looking at us. And if your face is, hanging low, nothing's going on, then everyone else says, yeah, kuch nahi ho raha.
Yep.
And so we would do that. And every month we would sit down and see where are we, where's cash, where's this, everything else. And a night of heavy drinking would follow, and where we would decide, are we in for another month or not? Right. And that's how we went through those, 25, 26 months like that. The rest of it has to come from inside. And that's why that gut feeling is a very big thing, because your gut will tell you. Are you onto something or not? Only your gut can tell. I saw this fascinating movie last night, Panga. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's pretty interesting, very inspirational. And great acting by Kangna, and a little slow, but a true story about how a mom came back to play kabaddi. She was like a top player for girls kabaddi. She was India captain, and then she had a kid, she couldn't play, and how she came back at a very different age to play, very moving. But it was again, I think, so everyone tells her, you're crazy, you're not out of shape. She does try and she gets battered by all the young girls. And she says, no, there's something out here. And I think only she could tell that there was something. Like, I know I can do it, I just have to do this harder, I have to do. So I think wo aapko hi pata hota hai, no one else knows that. That only the entrepreneur knows, is there something here or not? Because who are you fooling at the end of the day?
Yeah.
So. A bit of it is the self-esteem and self-projection, but most of it is deep down inside. Can you deal with another failure? Be aware of competition, but don't obsess on them. Obsess on customer, your customer, but be aware. Booking's a great company, I have to admit. In fact, so much so that the Booking CEO over 5 years who took the company from 20 billion market cap to 80, we've taken him on as an advisor. Wow. And he's phenomenal. Lot to learn. I mean, there's no question. Ex-Microsoft guy, Darren Houston, very bright. So there's a lot to learn from them. But then I think we understand the Indian traveler better. So now we're doing a lot of business with Indians traveling overseas, booking hotels from us. Because we're giving them hotels which are Indian friendly. Serve you Indian food or close to Indian food, which means vegetarian, close to the places Indians want to shop. Booking can't get that. But I just want to do this for Indians. Booking is for Europeans or whatever. So I think we know the Indian customer and we should play to our advantage, especially for veggies. And my wife's pure vegetarian now and she struggles and it's tough. And vegetarians also want to travel the world. All they want to know is like, give me one hot meal a day, ideally two.
Right.
Breakfast is the easy one. Lunch and dinner is damn tough, especially if you don't even eat egg as an ingredient. Then you're totally screwed. Yeah. So it's really hard and it's very tough on the family around you also because then we say, oh God. But as my son loves to say, mom's waiting for that smashing eggless dessert which doesn't exist. Because every restaurant should go and say, which one is eggless? So they'll look at her like, what, eggless? Like, so it's, I think competition is good, yeah. It keeps you on your toes. Yeah. It makes you strive for better. In air, I wonder sometimes in air, we are the only competition, really. Air, all our competitors, I don't mean to discredit anyone, but they're all losing share despite being the cheapest game in town, etc. So there we have to peg ourselves with a very different metric, like set our own conversion goals, set our own this thing. International air is a different challenge. People still book international air offline. Right. We're trying to move that because, large agents will give people, acha abhi aadha de do, aadha aake dena, that's changing. Can we give on the fly credit? We're doing all of that now. Right. But lots to be done still. Yeah, but these companies you named are all excellent companies, especially Booking I admire a lot. Can't overemphasize the value. Only thing I would say is quality is far more important than quantity. See, the biggest problem with training, which you guys would have learned, or trainings, or what we call skip. So we have people here, like a very senior person in HR, just focusing on OD, just organization development, and they're the people I put you in touch with, and down the line team. But I would say quality over quantity. See, what happens with all trainings, or with everything we do, even books, even this thing is the funeral effect, which is you feel very sad or very emotional for a day or two, and then life goes on and you forget it. With trainings also, if you don't have refreshers, if you don't come back. So I think that's also important to do, either with the trainer or with someone in the team. Otherwise, we all get excited. Like even at the Jaipur Lit Fest, I took notes. I was really excited after a long time. I do take some notes, but normally I don't. And I was really excited. I took those notes and I promised myself on the flight back, I was kind of reading them and seeing them and saying, yeah, about writing a book. Because for me, it was a very different realm. But I also know maybe 2 months down the line, I'll be saying like, what was that again? Because you get busy. Right. So I think it's the job of the organization to ensure that you're putting them to practice. And I always tell people, take one thing away from this training. Correct. One, don't take 5. True. But put it to practice. Yep. Yep. It's way better than saying these 5, I've noted down 10. I have many colleagues who still fill reams and reams of paper of notes in their books, and I used to do that with diaries. You can't retrieve it, there's no point. Now all my notes are actually done on the phone or the iPad or something where I commit them, where I can retrieve them. But put one to practice. Very true. Rather than just 10, otherwise what's the point? Yeah. So I think if we learn one thing, that's great.